Okay, welcome everybody. This is Stuka Joe here at the 9th Bellota Con, and today's Saturday, January 24th. And we're here with another very special presentation of a game that hasn't been published yet, that I had a chance to look at it very succinctly last year, where I didn't have a chance to interview the designer. And now I have the designer with me, Pablo Ramirez. Pablo, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Stuka.
So what is this game about?
All right.
What's this game?
So this is Guerrilleros, the Spanish guerrilla after the Civil War, and it spans from roughly 1944 to 1952. And this game is about the struggle of the Francoist regime forces against the reminders or the remains of the Republic, in the shape of people that went into the hills. They had to move out of their houses because they wanted to form a counterinsurgence against the fascist regime of Franco.
So it's a two-player game.
That's correct. This is a two-player game. So far, I'm observing the possibility of a single-player option, but this has been designed with two players in mind, with highly asymmetric goals or objectives, or victory conditions in the end.
Okay.
And of course, as I said, a very asymmetric balance of powers here, because as any other counterinsurgence game.
So is it? I notice it has cards, but is it a card-driven game?
That's correct. The main engine of the game, so it's a card-driven game, and it has a few other components that are important to move the pieces around, combat, and so on. But the main mechanics is the combat-driven game. Each side, it's in Spanish, but anyway, the edition by NAC hopefully will be both in English and Spanish, full in English and full in Spanish. So I'm showing you just the prototype, of course. The cards of the regime are these ones, and they have the usual shape of a two-side card that you can use by the operational points at the top or the event at the bottom. Depending on whether the event has to be discarded, there is a condition there, and you have to apply it in every phase where you play the cards, which is the main phase of the game. You have to play turn by turn by basically the upper part, the points, or the event. You apply the event just as it says. Of course, it's a usual breaking the rules event.
Yes.
Or the points, the operation points can be spent doing different things. Each side has different, I've called them maneuvers, that you can perform, and they go from the basic movement from point to point. You can see the map that it has connected areas. In this case, they are not exactly points. They represent like 5 to 10 kilometer areas around the name of the location, so to speak. Basic maneuvers, movement. You can put propaganda. Both sides can do this, but then we split into different maneuvers because the regime, which is basically the full country, the government itself, has different options to push the Maquis, the Spanish guerrilla, and the Spanish guerrilla on their own. They have their own maneuvers to hide, try to recover, etc.
Okay, yeah, and I see that on the board the government pieces are in black.
That's correct. Right now, since this is a prototype, this is just a basic design.
This is a prototype.
Exactly. So these were the pieces that I could gather. But the colors, unless somebody tells me otherwise, but so far nobody has, the colors have been working all right. But in any case, the design of the game is absolutely, this will not be the final design. This has been done on my own. I am not a graphic designer, so I'm doing my best here. Anyway, so.
It looks really nice, anyway.
Thank you. I can show you a few pieces just so you understand. And of course, there will be combat in this game, needless to say, all right? So there is fog of war. The Maquis side, where you're standing, have the red pieces facing you. I have my own pieces facing me, which are the black ones.
Yes.
And they usually have, let me check a few of them. Yeah, here we have a good rooster. So there are a few types of pieces. They are not complicated at all. When there's a combat, the pieces involved, let's say we have these ones on a combat, they have to throw a few dice. There are some rules. I'm not going to go into them in any way. This represents a two-step unit. Same here, same here. This would be, let me check. Let me see where there is one. Here we go. This would be a single-step unit. And basically, some dice are thrown, and depending on the number that is facing up, that you can read,
yes.
This represents the force, the strength of the unit. The hits will be done according to this number. There are a few other factors.
You have to roll that number or less?
Correct. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, that number or less.
And I see like the two's facing me, but the one is facing the other side.
This is because, and you will have this number.
Okay, nice.
On purpose, the back side of the units gives some information. So you have one unit like this. This is at full strength. If you have it like this, it's been damaged.
That would be what I would be seeing if I'm the Maquis player.
That's correct.
And I would be able to know if it's full strength or half strength.
Exactly.
What I don't know is the real strength.
Exactly. You have to remember this because when you engage the enemy and you have a fight or whatever, the surviving units, they go back to the original state, and if any of them has been injured, that's fine. I can see it. You can also see it from your side, but I have to remember what those numbers were. Okay. It's not complicated in any case, but anyway, this adds up. This actually adds a layer of history to this. There were not, in the case of the Maquis, there were not so many Maquis, so it was relatively easy to both know the people that were in the hills, hidden in the forests. So if you had gone into a combat with them, you would actually know that maybe some of them were injured, or some were not. This is why I am representing this. And also on the regime side, on the Guardia Civil, on the Civil Guard side, I'm giving this information so that Maquis knows that the replacements had to come. This means there were Civil Guards all around Spain. There was Maquis activity all around Spain, but the replacements, those were not so common. It would take some time to bring people and replace damaged units and so on. So this is why I'm giving this information here. Okay. Something interesting, if you don't mind, I can talk about, it's about the map. Because I just said that the Maquis were spread throughout the whole peninsula, throughout mainland Spain. But I'm not using the full map here. I have divided the map into three, I've called them fronts. They were not fronts, they would be regions, big regions. But for a war game, I think it's nice to speak about fronts anyway.
Yes.
So the south front, the central front that spreads out through the center of Spain.
Central front
and the northern front.
And the northern front.
Actually, these three fronts have gathered the main areas of activity. Where the Maquis were most active and they had more. They brought more problems to the regime anyway. It's not that we hadn't Maquis here or even in this side of Spain. We had, but anyway, I've taken some design decisions.
You're focusing on the areas that the Maquis were more active.
Exactly, correct. Okay. And I have connected the fronts through roads because this is something that of course, it's not that they were isolated. Maquis could move. It was not so common that they moved from for instance, northern regions to central regions. Yeah. They would usually stay around their actual towns, their local, the towns where they were born in any case. But of course they could move as well anyway. So I have connected the fronts through main roads that the regime, the Civil Guard doesn't need to use because the same way there are some restrictions to the movement of the Maquis, the Civil Guard was spread out through the peninsula. It had all control of everything. So these roads are only used by the Maquis because the Civil Guard can redeploy, coming to the reserve and coming back anywhere on the map. So they don't need.
They're not restricted by the roads.
Exactly.
The Civil Guard.
Exactly. Whereas the Maquis need to jump between the chunks of roads to move from one front to the other.
Okay.
and this implies some negative effects for
And
the.
I see
for the
that you
Maquis.
have the northern, central, and southern
That's correct.
group, but you have another enclave here.
I have deliberately omitted this one because these are the main fronts,
okay.
but this one is a temporal front. This front represents the main and I would say only actual operation of the Maquis in all its years of existence. Why? Because the Maquis didn't have a really solid and consolidated infrastructure. It was a very cellular and spread out and do what you can guerrilla. However, in 1944, in October 1944, when the Allies took over France, they liberated France.
Yes.
Many of the combatants of the Spanish Civil War that ended in '39, they went to France. They had to.
Yes.
They got into exile to France, and they helped the resistance in France. And in 1944, which is where the game starts, they shaped up. I would say it's a relatively small operation. Small. We're talking about the numbers are not totally clear because there are many fonts and many sources that give different numbers, but a few thousands.
Okay.
And they came into Val d'Aran. Val d'Aran is a valley in the north of Spain, right below the Pyrenees.
Yes.
And they entered, they conquered a few small towns in a few square kilometer area. And while this might look like a very small feat, this was actually a slap in the face of Franco. Why? Franco was, I mean, it had already been like 5 years after the end of the Spanish Civil War. Franco was in control. There were a lot of reconstruction. There were many problems in Spain in the first stage of Franco's regime. And he did not expect this. The Gestapo had actually told Franco that the south of France had a lot of activity, a lot of insurgent activity that might, who knows, but that might try something in the north of Spain, and he didn't really pay too much attention. This is why this operation came to happen. If had Franco listened to the Gestapo, this might never have happened. In any case, this was a very short event. It was an operation that lasted roughly a week. And so when this front is opened, when the operation, it's called Reconquista de España, taking back Spain or reconquering Spain. Yeah. When you're playing, and you detonate this operation, you freeze the map because the normal turns of the game are 6 months, two rounds or 2 turns per year. Okay.
I see.
But when you open this one, you freeze everything here, and you play a 7-day operation, which is a very fast playing, let's say, interruption of the game. It usually plays in around 10 to 15 minutes. That's it. It's a very dynamic play in which a few troops that are in France come to Spain, and the Maquis needs or tries to get them into the main fronts. Why is this operation relevant? Because I've not talked about the victory conditions here. And the victory conditions for the regime is either to reduce the morale of the guerrilla to 0,
Okay.
or end up with all units that have a name here. These are called agrupaciones guerrilleras, guerrilla groups, guerrilla or Maquis, I would say brigades, because maybe not even brigades, but anyway, so to speak, this would be the back scale. And if the regime ends up with all those units that have a name next to them,
all the named units. Yes.
yes, correct. These are all the acronyms of the actual names of these brigades. When the regime ends up with all of them here, the game is done. The regime
They
wins.
eliminate all the named
Exactly.
units.
That's
Okay,
right.
that's
the regime wins the game.
wins the game. Or if morale goes to 0.
Correct. On the other side, the Maquis can win if they reduce the regime prestige down to 0.
Down to 0.
This didn't happen, of course, but this would simulate like the hindrance, in the end, losing all kind of prestige, both nationally and internationally. Because the operations of the Maquis in the end have an echo in the foreign countries, and the tolerance to Franco's regime would be reduced, and eventually some kind of action, whether internal or external, would be taken against it. So this would be a sudden death victory as well. What happens if none of these is achieved during the game? So if there are units that survive. One of the things that I wanted to bring up into this game is what I've called the relato histórico, so how history remembers these events.
Okay.
This is a track.
Be like the historical account.
Correct. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, the historical account, that's correct. This starts in the most favorable position. So
a historical account track.
Exactly. And this goes down, meaning both the regime or the Maquis can have a worse historical account depending on the actions they do here. So, for instance, let's assume that the Maquis worsens the account down to from favorable to neutral or something like that, and the regime manages to keep it in favorable. If none of the sudden death conditions have been met in the last round, you check this. So this would be like, okay, the conflict has ended on its own, because this conflict, the Maquis can never win from a military point of view. Mm-hmm. You check this, and the side that has the better historical account wins the game.
So the historical account also would also like represent the opinion of the people of
absolutely
who actually won and who actually lost.
Absolutely. Because this and this takes us back to reality. This conflict is not forgotten. I mean, people know about the Maquis, the Spanish Maquis, but and there is more information now. But during the whole Francoist regime, down to 75, 76, this conflict was absolutely hidden, and it had a lot of impact especially during these first years of the Francoist regime. Okay. It had a lot of impact, and many people were involved. It affected, especially the civilians. It affected them because they were your parents or your brother, or also women, of course, and they are represented here as well. They had to leave their houses, go into the forests, the mountains to live, and this had a lot of personal impact, especially on the civilians. Okay. The same way, also, the regime pushed very, very hard on the civilians I mean, treason was one of the main sources of finding these people. You know,
if you were harboring.
Exactly.
Maquis, you're going to be prosecuted and probably executed.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes even to the point that if you just crossed a few Maquis on the woods, you were taking a walk on the woods, and you would cross some of them, you were in trouble, because if you didn't say nothing, and the civil guard found those Maquis like 5 minutes later, they might know that you had crossed them, and if you had said nothing, this would imply that maybe you were supporting them somehow.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
they're in the middle of the crossfire. The
correct. Absolutely correct.
And I noticed that there's a lot of cards.
Yeah.
And a lot of type of card decks.
Sure. Let me go through a very quick summary of the round. So there are three main phases. The conflict phase, in which an event and some side cards are taken. Mm-hmm. Then the main phase, which is the maneuver phase, in which, as I said, the main CDG mechanics come into place. Excuse me. And then the repercussions phase, which is kind of a maintenance phase.
Okay.
In the conflict phase, you draw an event. There are some. You do what it says. The influence, the main political influence of the Maquis has to be shifted according to what it says. Sometimes it goes to one of the main political, let's say, trends or ideologies that the Maquis had, which are represented here in this track here. The communist, the Spanish Republic, which is like a kind of a socialist moderate influence, or the anarchist. Correct. And you do what the event says. Once you've done what the event says, you might need to get, depending on a track that tells you, you might get, or each side might get something. For instance, the regime might get an opposition card, because even though it was a fascist regime that was, it had all the power, of course, there were some, especially at the beginning of the Francoist regime, there were some opposition sources. that are represented in this track here, you would get a card, and this would, of course, complicate the life of the regime.
Okay.
Or also the regime might get one of these directives cards, directriz, which usually bring some benefit to them. Sometimes a very strategical benefit to the regime. So these cards are pretty important.
Okay.
On the Maquis side, you might have to get objectives, like military objectives, which are usually, I don't know, breaking or detonating some explosives in this place, like on the railways or something like that. This kind of objectives that usually translate into a loss of the prestige of the regime, or on the historic account, an improvement of the Maquis, or diminishing the regime one. And aside of objectives, you can get also the actual guerrilleros, actual people that participated. I've tracked quite a few names.
You got historical characters there?
That's correct. Those were absolutely historical, 100% historical characters that have an effect that is directly related. If you can see here in color, AGMG stands for one of these guerrilla groups, guerrilla brigades.
The named guerrilla groups.
That's it. So these cards will affect specifically one of the units or on the map. If that unit is eliminated from the game, these cards, the associated cards, are lost, obviously.
No effect, they're gone.
But these are the equivalent to the directives of the regime. So these bring up a quite powerful addition to the abilities of the Maquis. So these cards are critical, I would say, to the Maquis. One point that also you might have noticed is that the number of units, and actually when you start playing as the regime, and when you start playing as the regime and see that the Maquis do not have so many pieces anyway, you start noticing that you, as a regime, you don't have so many pieces either. It takes quite some effort for the regime to catch the Maquis. This is why we have this huge reserve here.
Oh,
this represents
a reserve box.
That's correct. It represents the overwhelming power of.
So the number of units, it's going to gradually increase on the map as the conflict keeps on going.
That's correct, because the Maquis, in the end, they start at their peak. When you start the game, they start at their peak, and they can only go down from there. The regime is the opposite.
And they become a headache, and then so the regime dedicates more resources to them, so they pour in more civil guards.
Yeah, you need to step up your game. You need to bring people in, because these are just a few guys in the mountains, but you cannot catch them. So you need to bring people in, and this, of course, can have a bad side, because you can. Let's say that Franco might not be that happy that you are not capable as the civil guard, because you represent the civil guard in the end. If you're not capable of catching all these guys, this might be against you. If you have to deploy way too many troops, you have a negative.
It's going to have a negative impact on.
Exactly, in the end, because you are proving yourself incapable of doing it.
It's like you have in games about Germany, you got Hitler present, sometimes overlooking what you're doing. Here it's Franco that he has some influence in the game.
That's correct. That's correct. And I think I've roughly gone through the basic things. I can comment a couple of these as well that I have not gone through, because among the many maneuvers that the two sides can do, there are two elements here that I think are interesting and are gathered in a single track, which is the logistic capacity of the Maquis and both the treason that the Maquis are subject to.
Okay.
And these are shared. These are two pieces that share the same track.
So, guys, it's a track where you keep track of logistics and the treason.
The treason, that's correct. Yeah,
okay.
That's correct. Both sides want to have these two pieces on the opposite side where the other side wants. So. Okay. The Maquis would like to have a minimum level of treason, because they suffer from it, and a maximum logistic capacity.
Okay.
Logically, the regime wants the Maquis to have the minimum capacity, logistic capacity, and the maximum treason applied to them. So this is a track where both players, they both interact with it, and they pull back and forth so that
And you're going to have is that going to be tied also with the play of cards that are going to increase the
Correct.
treason level or
correct.
or
There will be
logistical
different
level
effects.
or vice
The
versa?
main effect to change the regional logistics is propaganda. Propaganda is placed on the map, and if let's say if the propaganda thrives and survives, and you know, and the population absorbs it, it is taken to this track here, which is the popular trust or the popular opinion, the popular I would say trust is a better definition for it. So that if you feel this track, both the regime and the Maquis can do it. So if there is a lot of propaganda that actually goes down and population starts to believe in you, so to speak, you can modify the level of treason.
Oh, that
or
would
logistics
modify also the logistical
Exactly.
and treason.
One way or the other.
levels.
Because if the Maquis manages to
So you're
kill this
trying to
track,
gain the hearts and minds of the populace.
perfect definition. Perfect
And this
definition.
is where you keep your track, and that will have an impact on logistics and
Exactly.
treason levels.
Exactly. That's correct.
So they're interconnected. Very nice. Very nice.
Exactly.
Yes.
So maybe the only last one that I can think of is the Maquis camps. They had some main camps spread out in different forests, caves. Sometimes it was just that, let's say, a hole in the ground where they store their stash things. These are abstracted into these pieces here. These are the main camps of the northern front, central front, and southern front.
Okay.
They start hidden. They should be on the map. They are on the map, but the pieces are outside the map. This represents that the regime doesn't even know where they are. They don't have the lightest clue about them. However, the regime can investigate through some cards, some actions of the cards, some events, and they can bring the camps into the map. When they come into the map, they remain hidden, so it's like a two-step discovery, so to speak. The first one with 2 layers discovery. This with the first one, and if another card is applied to it, they are discovered. And this become a problem to the Maquis. If they lose their main camps, they lose a lot of morale. So the more time the Maquis can have them hidden, and this is not up to them, this falls on the regime side to investigate and find them. The more time that they can remain hidden, the better for them. So, in my opinion, the regime, if you get a card that says that you're gonna discover the camps, go for them, because this will heavily affect the Maquis morale if you find and destroy the camps.
And that can also reflect the collapse, for example, of a network of Maquis in one region and not necessarily the other regions.
Absolutely.
And you can do, I mean, you can have one region being their camp disclosed, that region goes,
Correct.
lose that region.
And you've touched a very important point that I had missed. These pieces, there are a few of them, they represent the links, los enlaces, the links, or the as they were called, the guerrilla, not from the hills but from the plains. Those were actual civilians that were, in principle, they were like regular civilians that they were not supporting anyone, but in the end, it was a network of support that the Maquis had, because it's absolutely impossible to survive for a long period of years in the hills without any kind of local support from the hills, where you get clothes.
Day-to-day, food and
Exactly, all the basic stuff in the end, right? So the Maquis, one of the most interesting and convenient things for the Maquis is to place these links, these helpers, in the map. When you place one of them in one of the populated areas, this would be small towns.
they're color-coded and the symbols.
Yes, correct. They are
Small
color-coded.
town,
This is like a regular towns or larger towns, and these are cities.
Those are the cities.
Whereas these are hills, and this is high mountain high mountain ranges. Yeah, right. So if you manage to locate, you can do this through your maneuvers. As a Maquis, if you can locate your link in any populated area, right? Small towns, regular towns, large cities. This will affect on a one distance radius anything that happens there. For instance, you have it in Tarancon. You have this Maquis here, and you have this Maquis here, or even in these hills here, and the regime finds the Maquis in these hills. Since they are at a 1 point of distance, if there is a combat, these guys will receive the help of this. And this help, when you go down into the combat and the number of dice that you throw and so on, can be absolutely critical. So it's very convenient to have them, but it's also complicated for the Maquis to bring them into the game. So you have to step up your game also as a Maquis. It depends. The dependence of the links is the logistic capacity. The higher logistic capacity that you have, the easier it will be to bring the links in.
Okay, I see.
And the higher the treason is, the easier it will be for the regime to remove them from play.
Oh, I see. Nice. Okay.
This is how this
how
rules
that track
entangle
is tied
exactly.
to these actions here.
It was a practical example of how this track works. This will complicate or ease the life of both sides, depending on where these pieces are.
That's very interesting. So Pablo, is there anything else you want to? Well, I know you can't go into a lot of detail because this is just an introduction.
No, but the main things are here, and I think that I've not leaving anything aside. There are a couple of other mechanics that I've not mentioned about the exile, because you can exile through some regions that have a port. You can go into exile, which is something that has a both positive and negative effect for the Maquis. And this is actually something really relevant towards when you speak about this conflict. The exile played a big role in the end, because the fewer people you have in the map, the more chances you have to be defeated as a Maquis.
Yeah.
But it's also convenient to also prevent the regime from collecting more points, exactly, and so on. Yeah, and I think that's it. I think I've covered, I would say, 90-95% of the game, and I'm not going into details, as you said.
Okay. This is as I said before, this is a game that I saw, I think, at the last Bellota Con.
That's correct.
And I wanted to interview you, but we didn't have a chance. So in what stage is this map wasn't here last year, right? This is a newer map?
This is a newer map. I had a similar one, but of course, I'm developing the game with Carlos Gete, a very nice colleague that knows a lot. And I would say that but the design, as I said, is not definitive. This is just my design, graphical design, and hopefully this will be heavily improved. It's plenty of colors and plenty of things that are very convenient to explain the game and play it, but I hope that we get a very nice map in the end and very nice graphics in it. And about the stage of the game, if I had to guess, I think we are like 75%, something like that, 75. I remain calm about it. I'm not in a rush. The publisher is not in a rush. We all want that this game is nice, that when you play it, you enjoy it, obviously. So I'm not in a rush for publishing at all. And I would say that hopefully within a year, if this year is fruitful, I hope that we can be in the 90%, something like that.
Well, I hope it gets published and published soon, because it's a fascinating subject. I like very much the mechanics of this game. It's a very different kind of block game, definitely, and it's a conflict that you don't see games about at all. There's none.
War games, I have not discovered any.
All the partisan warfare games that you see are either World War II or some other conflict.
Correct.
But you never see. After the Spanish Civil War, there was
exactly
a partisan conflict going on in Spain for many years.
Yeah, this is why I said that it's kind of a semi-hidden conflict that I think is fascinating and actually a very important part of the Spanish history of the 20th century. So,
I want to thank you for doing this.
Thank you,
and wish you the best. And
thank you so much.
Thanks, and I want to thank everybody who's been watching. This is Tuca Joe signing off for now.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for watching.